Good morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you're watching this. Before I consult the oracle today, I wanted to first dispel a myth. Many people, in fact, I would say most people, believe that it's important, it's actually necessary to ask a very specific question in order for the oracle to give you the correct answer. In fact, I think most people I've ever known believe this. This is complete BS, okay? This isn't the way the ancient Chinese understood how to use the oracle, and it's why I don't do so in my weekly oracle readings. It's one of the reasons. It's also because I don't know you and I don't know your situation. But back in ancient times, people would consult the oracle by describing a particular situation, what the circumstances were, and how they got there, and what they wanted as an outcome. And then they would ask the spirits for guidance. Initially, they used bones for this, and then they moved on to yarrow sticks and then coins. Some people still use yarrow sticks. I don't. Some people say, oh, that's not as spiritual. But for me, coins have always worked, so it doesn't really matter. Don't believe all of those rules. Anyway, sometimes the spirits would actually condemn the situation, in which case the person who was consulting the oracle had a choice. They could either change their behavior in order to affect the outcome, or they could make sacrifices to the spirits. These days, we don't tend to do too many sacrifices, but we do have the option to change our behavior or to ignore the reading that we get because we don't like what it says. But what that does is it gives the responsibility to the person who's consulting the oracle. They are the one who is responsible for their behavior and therefore what the outcome is going to be. So it gives more autonomy to the person who goes to the I Ching for guidance. It puts the responsibility on you, dear one, for your behavior. This is why my question for these general readings is always, what do we need to know for today? That's a general question. It's never specific. Not only because it's a general reading for all of you, and I don't really know your specific situation, but also it's the way the I Ching was meant to be consulted, a general situation. I cannot describe a personal situation on YouTube because I don't know you, okay? I don't necessarily know who you are or what your situation is. So if you are interested in consulting the I Ching yourself, please keep this in mind. Sometimes the Ching will give you incredibly specific answers, but not usually. The first time I ever used the I Ching, I was thinking of moving from the Northeast to New Mexico. And I got the only hexagram in all of the 64 hexagrams that started with the sentence, the Southwest furthers. The Northeast does not further. That seemed pretty eerie to me. It knew, okay? The I Ching speaks in poetry, and you have to decipher what the meaning of that poetry is for you. Okay, so now let's get to today's reading. I hope this helped. So now let us go to our reading for today, and that is, as always, what do we need to know for today? What is our message for today? So the spirits will guide us in our message for today. Let's see, let's open this first so we can have a place to write it down. And today is 2/26. 26. And I will put my Labradorite heart on there. And let's see, we get a tail, and a tail. It's a 3-tailed day. That's a 6. So we start with a changing line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I can start here, I think, I hope. That's a 6. What do we need to know for today? What is for our highest good today? What's the message for today? A tail. This is a head, I believe. Yep, it's a head and a tail. So 2 tails and a head is a 7. Solid line. What is our message for today? Looks like another 3-tailed day. 1, 2, 3. Wait a minute. Nope. 2 heads and a tail. It's pretty. These are pretty dark. It's sometimes really hard to see if they're heads or tails. Maybe you can see there. There's more going on. So 2 heads and a tail is an 8. So here's the lower trigram. It's a solid line between 2 broken lines. What is our message for today? Hello. Don't try to run away. That's a head. It's hard to see it, but it is. Tail and tail. 2 tails and a head is another 7. Oh, I'm going to be 1 line short. I'll just squeeze it in there. What is our message for today, dear spirits? Head, head, tail. Aha, that's an 8. We can squeeze you in. What is our message for today? Head, tail, tail. Okay, that's a 7. So look at this. This trigram here, a broken line between 2 solid lines, is the inverse of this one. It's a solid line between 2 broken lines. But this one changes. And so now we'll have 2 solid lines with a broken line on top. And then this top one, nothing changes. So then we have a solid line, a broken line, and a solid line. Okay, so whoa, I did that awfully close. Let's see what we have for today. What do we have for today, tra-la? Okay, so the initial hexagram was a broken line between 2 solid lines. No, that's the top. broken line, solid line, broken line. This is the top. Sorry. This is the bottom, and Li is the top. Kan and Li. Oh, 64. Wow. Wow. This is hexagram number 64. I think I may have only gotten that once before in my whole life. And then it changes to Tui on the bottom, and the top one remains the same. So it's Kan, right, to 60. Interesting. I don't know if I've gotten 64 more than maybe once in my whole life. And I've been doing this for decades. 64, 61, 63, and 64. Yes, of course. I don't know if you can see this. Looks like it's... There you go. That's better. Before completion. You would think that the last hexagram would be after completion, but not in the I Ching. This is before completion. The abysmal water below and the flame on top, the clinging flame. This hexagram indicates a time when the transition from disorder to order is not yet completed. Well, that seems appropriate. I think the whole planet is going through that. The change is indeed prepared for, since all the lines in the upper trigram are in relation to those in the lower. However, they are not yet, hello, they are not yet in their places. While the preceding hexagram offers an analogy to autumn, which forms the transition from summer to winter, this hexagram presents a parallel to spring. Well, that's where we are, isn't it? Which leads out of winter stagnation into the fruitful time of summer. With this hopeful outlook, the Book of Changes comes to a close. The judgment before completion, success. But if the little fox, after nearly completing the crossing, gets its tail in the water, there is nothing that would further. Here's the poetry of the I Ching, and we'll go into that. The conditions are difficult, yes. The task is great and full of responsibility. It is nothing less than that of leading the world out of confusion back to order. And the world does not necessarily mean the outer world. It can be the inner world. It depends on your particular situation. At first, I'm not going to read everything, but at first, however, one must move warily like an old fox walking over ice. The caution of a fox walking over ice is proverbial in China. Yes, it is. His ears are constantly alert to the cracking of the ice as he carefully and circumspectly searches out the safest spots. The young fox, who as yet has not acquired this caution, goes ahead boldly, and it may happen that he falls in and gets his tail wet when he's almost across the water. Then, of course, his effort has all been in vain. Accordingly, in times before completion, deliberation and caution are the prerequisites of success. This is beautiful. I'm not sure I've ever gotten this. Maybe I have like 20 years ago. The image, fire over water, the image of the condition before transition. Thus, the superior man is careful in the differentiation of things so that each finds its place. We'll go into that later. We have only one changing line, and that would be 6 at the beginning, means he gets his tail in the water, humiliating. In times of disorder, there is a temptation to advance oneself as rapidly as possible in order to accomplish something tangible. I don't even want to go there. But this enthusiasm leads only to failure and humiliation if the time for achievement has not yet arrived. In such a time, it's wise to spare ourselves the opprobrium of failure by holding back. I remember my late husband used to say to me, your mistakes are mistakes of over-enthusiasm. So before we go on to the before we go on to the interpretation, I'm going to go to the second hexagram, which is number 60. Ah, yes, limitation. I actually like this one. You would think limitation would not be something to like. I don't know why my phone keeps going out, but limitation. The lake is still below and the abysmal water is above. The lake occupies a limited space. When more water comes into it, it overflows. Therefore, limits must be set for the water. The image shows water below and water above, with the firmament between them as a limit. The Chinese word for limitation really denotes the joints that divide a bamboo stalk. In relation to ordinary life, it means the thrift that sets fixed limits upon expenditures. Oh, did I ever learn this lesson? It's actually what's going on in my life right now, but I didn't mean it just for me. In relation to the moral sphere, it means the fixed limits that the superior man sets upon his actions, the limits of loyalty and disinterestedness. The judgment, limitation, success. Galling limitation must not be persevered in. Limitations are troublesome, but they are effective. If we live economically in normal times, we are prepared for times of want. To be sparing saves us from humiliation. Limitations are also indispensable in the regulation of the world conditions. In nature, there are fixed limits for summer and winter, a day and night, on and on. This is definitely the whole yin-yang principle. Okay, I'm not going to read all of it, and we don't have any lines to read. So let's talk about what this is actually telling us. Okay, so this first hexagram 64, 2 trigrams. The lower one is water, and the upper one is fire. Fire goes up, and water tends to go downhill. So they're going in opposite directions, okay? But they're acting according to their true nature. So if you try to put them together and force things, it doesn't work, okay? You have to be able to allow things to have their true nature and not rush into it. Remember, it talked about how the little fox getting his tail wet, and that's because he doesn't have the maturity yet to listen for the cracks in the ice, and therefore be careful about where he puts his feet. He rushes into things. So this is telling you, take your time. Don't rush. Allow the fire to go up and the water to go down. Okay? You have to allow things to separate initially before you can unite them. All right? And then there's the whole idea of before completion. Before. At a certain point, anything and everything will exhaust itself. The fire that burns up can't burn forever, it'll run out of fuel. The water that flows down can also be exhausted if the source dries up. Okay? So before completion is really about exhaustion. You have to allow things to exhaust themselves before you can put them together. And you can see it now in the whole world. I think it's my opinion that people are rushing too fast to try and make things happen and not allowing things to happen in their own natural time. So that is the basic meaning of this 64th hexagram before completion. Now let's move on to the 60th. This second hexagram, excuse me, limitation, is a perfect follow-up to this first one, because this second one really talks about how things can't be separate forever. The fire will go up, the water will go down, they're going in separate directions, but it can't happen forever. So this is why limitation basically means just stop, chill out, give it a chance, don't rush. And then they talked about, I love the line of galling limitation must not be persevered in. And the reason is because galling limitation, just like every other limitation, is going to end like everything else. So again, it's the perfect follow-up to this number 64. It's a way of saying, take a breath, take a pause, stop, allow things to go crazy in their own time, in their own way, and eventually it will be time to reunite them. But it may not be right now. So that is today's reading. And I hope that this resonated with you. And if it did, you know what to do. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment. Let me know, does this resonate with you? It really resonated with me, because this is actually speaking to exactly what's going on in my life right now, even though I didn't ask for it on a personal basis. Okay, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.